The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, listeners like you, and a giant dancing panda.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board card and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Ex Libris from Renegade Games. Then they look at reviews of Terraforming Mars, Great Western Trail, and Role Player in a truly massive Dukes sextuple take. And now, The Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
Yeah, making up for lost time there. This is episode 168, the Duchy Decimal System, a title that was given to us by our buddy BJ from Board Game Gumbo, which makes perfect sense because we're talking about a game about libraries, Alex.
How exciting.
The Duchy Decimal System. I like that.
You forgot, it's no longer BJ from Board Game Gumbo, it's BJ from Big Time Gumbo.
Oh.
Because he's Washington Post famous.
That's true. Yeah, there's a Washington Post article that he was in talking about a modern board game, and that's pretty cool.
And he didn't even mention the Dukes. God.
I know. Come on, BJ. But of course, that's a reference to the Dewey Decimal System. Do you have it memorized, Alex? Because I do.
Absolutely not.
Quick, name a book. I'll tell you the number. Ready, go. Wait. Hold on.
Dude.
You can't even think of a book name. I'm just going to I was going to make up a number and it'd be completely wrong, but I stumped you with the name of the book.
Name a book. Any book.
Any single book.
Dune.
No, the moment's passed. It was never
Okay.
here, and it's already passed somehow.
Great.
But anyway, Alex, I don't know if you know this, but every other week, or I guess every 3 weeks in this case, we get some help from our friendly guild members who help us name the episode. We're guild number 2008 over on Board Game Geek. And you can go over there for our Dukes on Deck, where we talk about all the games we're going to be discussing in the episode, and then, get some help from the name. So we'll give you the episode title runners up at the end of the episode. So Alex, how you doing, buddy?
Less sick than you.
I'm not really sick anymore. So this episode is dropping a week late. I was super sick with the flu. Raquel had it. Chewy had it. Mariah miraculously came through unscathed, but I was super sick. Normally, if I'm sick, I still go into work because I have too much junk to do. But I took a couple days off. I took a couple half days going to urgent care, taking Chewy to urgent care. I said, "Hey, Alex.
Hey, Sean.
I can't do the episode this week."
Oh, and I said, you're a slacker, man.
I know.
I never leave for any extended period of time.
Nope.
And delay episodes.
Nope, never. But no, I'm doing better, feeling better, feeling healthier. Got back out to game night, and so things are chugging along. Alex, how about you?
Are you feeling better both physically and spiritually, Sean?
Yes. My heart is filled with the love and hate of Cthulhu. So
excellent.
I'm
doing fine. A lot of stuff going down at work, but not bad stuff, just stuff. A lot of stuff.
See, when I say a lot of stuff going down at work, I usually mean a lot of bad stuff, but. That's good.
No, in this case, it's just busy. It's good things. But that would be too much of a plug for monochromatic wolf play experiences, so I won't be doing that. Instead, let's talk about what we've been playing lately, Sean.
Sure.
What have you been playing lately?
So I got to get a game in of Pie Town. This is from Renegade Game Studios, designed by Daniel Fremgen, Fremgen.
Renegade.
So this is an interesting game, Alex, and I'm very curious to see what you would think of this. I want you to play this game. So this is a game where you are baking pies. You are collecting some ingredients to bake them, sell them off the market. The better the pie, the more points it's going to be worth once you sell them off at the market. And you even have a super secret recipe. And anytime you make a secret recipe pie, you're going to score a bunch more points than you would for other pies. But the thing is, you don't want your opponents to know what your secret pie recipe is. And so there's a little bit of deduction that happens throughout the game, because as you're making pies, you want to be baking multiples at once so that you could say, hey, for this pie, It uses 3 ingredients. This pie uses 3 ingredients, and this pie uses 3 ingredients, but you don't know which ingredients go in which pie. And you say, well, I'm baking a secret recipe pie, and I'm baking a common pie, and I'm baking a rare pie. And so there's this weird little deduction that's going on. It's like a very lightweight alchemist in that sense. It's kind of weird. Now, the main mechanism of the game, Alex, is dice worker placement, something that I'm a big fan of. I love dice worker placement in many of its different iterations. This is one where the value of your die are important because it's going to determine how effective a particular action is. And certain actions you take will improve the value of the die going forward. And some might even reduce the value depending on the action. Does that remind you of any particular dice worker placement game?
And something sounds very familiar about that description of mechanics, and I am drawing a total blank, and I'm going to feel dumb.
If I tell you that perhaps you've blocked the memory out of your mind, would that help? Well, I guess by definition it wouldn't, but...
Is it Praetor?
Oh, it's Praetor, baby.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. So Praetor is an NSKN game designed by Andrei Novak, and it uses that mechanic, which I love. I love that mechanic. If you go back and listen to our review and the 15 other times we've mentioned it in a double take or whatever, it was a very heated episode. Very heated episode. But anyway, I like that mechanic. I think it's pretty cool. So based on that, so think of this, Alex, as a little bit Praetor, a little bit Alchemist in terms of the deduction, but way lighter, like a light worker placement game.
And not terrible, hopefully.
I disagree with that presumption, but yeah, what do you think? Does this sound interesting at all? Cutesy theme, cutesy art.
What I've heard that's interesting about this one, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong about this. I've heard that it's meaner than appearances would indicate.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. So the deduction aspect of the game felt a little tacked on, and it felt uninteresting. So one of the ways that you can help get some information about your opponent's secret recipe, and what's kind of cool is you get these tuck boxes, and you put the 3 ingredient chits that make up your secret recipe in the tuck box. And so when you place your dice out in the orchard, which is where you collect the different ingredients, your opponent can place a higher value die on top of your die, and the difference in value, that's how many of your secret ingredients they get to see in your box. But you don't know what they know about your secret ingredients. So there's a little bit of meanness there, I suppose. Also, once the die values get really high, you're able to just snatch up a bunch of the stuff in the orchard, because basically every pip that you have on the dice is one of the ingredients you get from the orchard. So yeah, I wasn't crazy about the deduction aspect of the game. I did enjoy that worker placement. I mean, I like dice worker placement. I like the idea of gaining experience and even spending value to take other actions. Like, for example, if you want to get an extra die, you have to place a die, but then that die you used loses 2 value. So interesting choices there. Overall, I don't know that I'm crazy about it. I think it was good, and I think that with the right play group, I'd probably play it again. What it really did, though, is it made me want to play Praetor. So
okay.
Next con we're at together, Alex, I'll pull it out, and you and I can get our Praetor
not play
on.
it, and I can tell you to put it away or go play with someone else.
So yeah, Pytown, I think it's worth checking out, especially if you're a group that likes some lighter games. It was interesting, and I'd play it again, but I wasn't crazy about it. So for me, it's one of those rare Renegade misses.
I'm sold on it being Renegade. I'm sold on the theme. I like lighter. Some of the descriptions you have for it and some of what I've heard about it have me a little hesitant. So we'll see.
I think you'd like this. I think you'd like this. So that is Pytown from Renegade Game Studios.
The one that I have that I'm talking about, I actually think you would like if you haven't talked about it before or played it before. Have you played Chimera Station?
I have not, no.
Okay. So this is, for full disclosure, a game published by one of our sponsors, Tasty Minstrel Games, designed by Mark Major. This is a worker placement game, Sean, set in space, where you have these little minion workery types that you are going to be sending out to, ultimately collect the most points, but you're going to be collecting the most points in a number of different ways. You can collect them by building interesting buildings. You can collect them by making nice trades. You can so the gist of this, I think the important thing to this is you have these little Chimera workers, and if you open the Chimera, which you can by upgrading by gene splicing, you can give them tentacles, or you can give them leaves, or you can give them different body parts that will give them different advantages. For instance, if they have leaves on them, you don't have to feed them in that round. If you have 2 leaves on them, they'll actually provide you food.
Ooh, delicious. Delicious workers. If they have crab claws on them, it lets you move into a space where a low-valued worker is. If you have double crab claws, you can basically move anywhere you want and bump people. So it's a worker placement game where you're adding more and more spaces of the board. The number of spaces on the board starts out very, very simple and small, not a ton of things you can really do. And then the game ramps up as you get more workers and more spaces to go to. So it starts off feeling very nice and quick and elegant, and it gets to be a little bit of a mess. A lot going on in this one. Some adorable things in the production. I mentioned the little lobster claws, crab claws you can get. The food, whenever you acquire food, it's cheeseburgers. It's these like little cheeseburger pieces. Also delicious.
Yeah, also delicious and fun. And I'd say the first half of this game, I really dug it. I really dug what Chimera Station was doing. I liked some of the combo play. It was nice. It felt light enough. And then as you get more and more worker spaces out there, it just got to be a little bit too overwhelming. It just, in terms of too much out there, too much going on, too much to think about. You have 4 workers, a lot of spaces. There's some combo play where you can place 2 workers at the same time or withdraw a worker and then place it again somewhere else. If this sounds like a game that is more of a Sean game, I would agree. This is more of a Sean game. And Sean, I think you actually would really like this game. I think you'd find it pretty interesting. It might be a little light for you, for where your tastes typically are, but it's not so light that I think you dismiss it. I think it would be one where the game would have to grow on you, though. I think by round 3 or 4 in that game, it's a 5-round game, to my recollection, it would really start clicking for you. So that's Chimera Station. I think if you, like 85% of our listeners do, share more of a game taste with Sean, it's worth checking out. And it has interesting components and a cool look, and some of it clicks together. If you fall into the team 15%, then this one may not float your boat so much. It felt like a little much going on for what I wanted out of a game. Not a bad game by any means, but just not my kind of game, I guess.
Not a boat floater for Alex.
It did not float my boat. My boat is not floated.
All right. Well, so Alex, I'm having to dig deep. I have every episode in our show notes, I have this little section that's a save for future weeks. And I've never really had to dig into it because I'm usually getting enough games in to talk about in our recent plays, especially since we've gone bi-weekly. But because I was sick, there have been some weird Wednesday nights at Empire. I don't really have a lot of new things to talk about. I do have a copy of Gloomhaven that just came in. I have that punched and organized. I have an insert for it. I have our starting characters. Raquel and I are going to play just the 2 of us, and we're each going to have 2 characters. I have our starting 4 characters painted, ready to go. I've had this done for like 3 weeks, and we just can't get it to the table. So hopefully at some point soon, I'll be telling you my initial thoughts on Gloomhaven. But digging deep here for a recent play, I got to finally play Wurfel Bohnanza, which is a game designed by Uwe Rosenberg. It's based on his Bohnanza game, where you are farming beans, so to speak. Original Bohnanza has a bit of negotiation built into it, and there's some interesting hand management. This is the dice version of it, and there's not really any negotiation. Basically, everyone has these different order cards that have different combinations of these different beans. And you are supposed to fulfill these orders from bottom to top. And as you fulfill an order, or as you fulfill a card, you're going to get some money, and you get a new card, and whoever can, I think it's first to 12 coins is going to be the winner. And what's interesting is the active player has this whole handful of dice, and they get to roll the dice, and they pick which ones they kind of lock in, and they keep rolling till they've run through their dice and locked in what they're going to lock in. And then they're able to complete orders again from bottom to top. So let's say I need green, green, red, and I've locked in green, green, red. Cool, I fulfilled that. I can now go on to the next thing, and maybe it's green, purple, red. Well, I can still use one of the original green and reds that I've used, so they kind of build on each other. While I'm doing all this, though, instead of carrying what I lock in, during individual rolls, if those individual rolls can fulfill a certain requirement of theirs, they can fulfill that. They move it up, so to speak. So you're active even when you're not playing the game. When you're not the active player, you're still doing something. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was a pretty decent variant of Bohnanza. Again, it doesn't have that negotiation aspect, but it was, for what it did, I thought it was really cool. And this is a bit of an older game, and older in our Cult of the New standard, older. I think it's like 2000. I'm just going to guess now, so I don't want to guess. But Amigo Spiel is the publisher. Definitely worth checking out. I think you'd really like this a lot, Alex. I'm looking to pick up a copy because I thought it was a lot of fun.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that is Wurfel Bohnanza, designed by Uwe Rosenberg.
Uwe, up to your old tricks again. So I got in a game, Sean, that a couple of times, at a couple of game nights over at Jamie Stegmeier's, that has been a pretty big hit at the table. They first found it at Geekway Mini, Geekway to the West Mini. They had a kind of a very small version of that convention, which actually happens in May and is going to be a ton of fun, and I'm excited for. When I Dream is the name of the game. This is a game put out by Repos Productions. It's designed by Chris Darsaklis, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. I may not be. When I Dream is a lighter social deduction game with shifting roles each round. Sean, I think you would dig this one in a lot of ways, but it's different from your typical social deduction. How it works is each round one player is the dreamer. They will literally put on a blindfold. The game comes with a blindfold that you will wear. All of the other players at the table will see a word and a picture, and their job is to try and get the dreamer to say that word. They will go around the table in turn order, saying one word to try and get that person. So if it was, say, bathtub, you might say clean. You might say wash. You might say porcelain. You might say any number of those kinds of things to try and get them to say bathtub. As soon as they say one word, that's their guess. The card either goes to you got it correct or you got it incorrect on one of those sides. Those are the core mechanics. Here's the twist or the trick to it. After the person puts on their blindfold, everyone else at the table gets a secret roll. So there are three roles. There's fairies, boogeymen, and sandmen. Fairies, their job is simply put to try and get that person who has the blindfold on to get as many of these words correctly as possible. Guess as many as they can. The boogeymen are trying to do the opposite. So if the word was bathtub, you might say samurai. Or you might say something subtler to try and throw it off so they said something that wasn't bathtub but was close. But they're kind of betraying. They're sort of the betrayal role. Then you have the Sandman. The Sandman's objective isn't necessarily to be good or bad. They just want an even number of good and bad answers. So if the dreamer is guessing really well for a round, they want to all of a sudden sabotage. If the dreamer is guessing really badly, all of a sudden they want to help. And that might switch in the middle of the round. They get the most points if they're dead even. So that's the core of the game. And basically, players will get points. The dreamer will get points for however many they got right. All the fairies will get points for how many the person got right. Boogeyman for how many were guessed incorrectly. Sandman, depending on how close they are, will get some amount of points, one or the other. The other interesting twist, though, Sean, and there's kind of a game within a game. At the end of all of this guessing, all of these words being given out, the dreamer has a chance to try and recall their dream. It's like a 90-second round, basically. And they will try and guess as many words as they can that they had already guessed previously in the round, trying to remember the words they listed out. And it is surprisingly hard to do that because for whatever reason, it's hard to remember those words that you had guessed previously. If you can guess all the ones you'd gotten correctly in your dream, you'll get a bonus 2 points, which is pretty nice. It's interesting, Sean. You have this main game, and then off to the side, you have this mini game. Everyone's playing their own version of things, and as someone who's asleep, you don't necessarily know who to trust. Someone who gives you good information at one point, or what you think is good information, might all of a sudden start giving you misleading information or bad information. It's easy enough if the word's bathtub and someone says purple or says something that's completely out of line with what other people are saying to just disregard that person. But if for one, you don't know what the correct answer is, and for two, there might be someone who's switching. Someone who's unreliable at one point might be the exact clue you need to get it. So this is really interesting as a social deduction word game kind of thing. Sean, does any of that sound appealing to you or sound interesting to you?
Oh, yeah. No, that sounds really interesting. And I couldn't picture the game when you said it. I looked it up, and I remember seeing this box, or I think they have a copy at Empire. So, yeah, it definitely sounds interesting, something I'd definitely be willing to give a shot. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a fast enough game, right? Because you play basically 1 round per player, plays between 4 to 10, and they list the playing time as 20 to 40 minutes, which is absolutely right. Especially when we played it with 5 and 6 were the 2 groups I played it with, or 5 and 7, and it moves pretty quickly. And there's something interesting in this sensory deprivation, in this different role, and playing with that. And I should say that having those interesting roles out on the table, it provides for some pretty cool gameplay. The one thing I'll say on components, though, the blindfold snapped in the middle of one of those games. It was not a very well-made blindfold, which, all things considered, I guess if people aren't going to cheat, the dreamer could turn their chair the other way or just cover their eyes. Like, there's plenty of ways around it. You don't need the blindfold. But, yeah, it's really nice. Really nice job by Repos. And as soon as it's more widely available, I will probably be getting a copy of this for myself because it went over that well.
So you probably don't want to play this with people that have lice, though, if you're sharing blindfolds.
Right, or you just make them close their eyes or not use the blindfold.
Okay.
Yeah. There's ways around it, Sean.
Wasn't looking for a serious recommendation.
Oh, okay, sorry. Well, that's me, old Serious Alex, providing the answers to questions you didn't actually have.
Yes, indeed. All right, well, that's When I Dream, and that's going to do it for our recent plays. Alex, let's head on over to the news desk.
All right, first up in news, a very Sean item of news here. Star Wars LCG is coming to an end. Oh my goodness, Sean, what's going on?
Oh man, you know what? I have never played the Star Wars LCG. It's something that I've wanted to play for a long time, but there were some issues with me playing it, with it getting to the table, and I think that it is kind of an issue with the LCG format, which I'll talk about here in a second. But basically, this is now the third or the fourth of Fantasy Flight's LCGs that is just going off into the sunset, so to speak. We had Warhammer Fantasy Invasion, which ended, and then also Warhammer 40K Conquest, which ended, but that was more a result of FFG losing the GW license, whereas the Fantasy Invasion, they just kind of brought it to a natural conclusion. You've got Game of Thrones, which transitioned into second edition, essentially. And so this is coming to an end. There is a final Force pack, Promise of Power, that is coming out. It's the last pack in this latest cycle of packs. The LCG format is where basically there are 6 expansions. They introduce somewhere between like 15 and 20 new cards into the LCG. And then every now and then they have these bigger expansions. And this is now coming to an end. And I'm curious why? Why are you ending what is probably a lucrative license? I mean, obviously it's Star Wars, and they've probably paid a pretty penny for that. I'm wondering if there's some issues with Lucasfilm having nuked the expanded universe, and now they don't have the full background of stuff to go into. I'm not sure. But I think, Alex, and maybe you're going to have a little bit of glee like you did last time when I was talking about the CCG model, but there is a certain unsustainability of the LCG model. Because at a certain point, while it's very easy to get in on the ground floor of an LCG, you buy a core set, maybe 3 core sets if you're like some people, like me. And then you just stay up to date on these packs. And if these packs come out once a month, 3 quarters a year or so, and then there's a big box expansion, cool. It's not an insubstantial amount of money, but it's definitely easy to keep up with in a certain sense. Problem is, what happens if it's 3 years in, you have these, 5, 6, 7, 8 different cycles, each with 6 packs. You have multiple big box expansions, and you want to come in and play competitively. Now you have this big expense, and that's hard for new people to get into. So I'm wondering if they're experiencing an issue with new players coming into an existing LCG. I mean, I'm obviously loving the L5R LCG, but if it's 2 years from now, is it going to be easy for people to get into? And to their credit, Fantasy Flight has kind of dealt with this in that they rotate out older sets, but it doesn't happen that often. It doesn't happen with the frequency that it happens in a game like Magic. And they even did something with Netrunner where they now have a new core set, which, for certain cards that were rotated out, now they're back in. So that's kind of a problem. I mean, in a lot of ways, this is a really innovative method of playing this style of game, this LCG format, but it definitely makes jumping into an existing LCG very difficult. And I'm wondering to what extent it's that they haven't seen new blood come into the LCG, this particular LCG, the Star Wars LCG, and to what extent it's, problems with the Lucasfilm licensing or whatever. But yeah, I think another reason for you, Alex, to never really get into the style of game.
Hey, not that I needed one anyway, because I wasn't going to get into one, and so I don't know. It doesn't change my opinion of LCGs one way or the other. I'm just happy to have you admit I'm a little right, which is always a good day in the Duchy.
Oh no! I'm not admitting you're right. I'm just saying there are some problems.
Okay, all right.
But there's still a lot of fun, Alex.
Yeah, all I heard was Alex is kind of right, and then I just kind of stopped there. Yeah,
no, never.
That's what I heard. Yep.
Never.
Anyway, moving on. Century Golem Edition. This is from Plan B Games, which is also the company that made Azul. Century Golem Edition is the version of Century Spice Road with art that a lot of gamers tend to dig. So this one was originally going to be sold exclusively on the Plan B web store, but it needs to grow a little bit more than that. So they are expanding availability of this. And Sean, I'm not surprised by this. Are you surprised by this?
No, I'm not. I mean, I think there might be some people that were annoyed because initially it was kind of only available at Gen Con because it was just kind of a surprise like, hey, guess what? We have this whole other edition. I mean, the story about this goes way back because initially when this game was under development with Plaid Hat Games, they were developing the two different themes to it. And then the Golem version just kind of went by the wayside when Plaid Hat went to Z-Man Philosophia, and then out of that Plan B came about. So, I'm not shocked. This is going to be available sometime in Q2 of this year here in the US, North America, UK, France, Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg, and Japan.
It's interesting, Sean. This has come up at work every now and then because I do deal with customer service issues. And, someone asking me the other day about one of our games, it's a little cheaper on Amazon here. Why not buy straight through Amazon? And my answer to that is you're supporting the publisher more directly. And his response was, well, I'll support the publisher indirectly and get it for cheaper anyway, which is certainly an approach a lot of people take. And that's fine. I think consumers should buy where they want to buy. The reality of it though is games sold directly through a publisher's website are significantly more profitable for so many more reasons for a company. So I understand the exclusivity. We've certainly done some stuff on that front ourselves. So it's not surprising. It's not surprising to hear that there was the effort made there initially. But at a certain point, if a game grows too much in popularity, or there's enough push, enough requests, enough whatever else, ultimately moving more units is going to be better in the long term, typically for a game. And for customers, that tends to be a good thing too, because it drives down the price of whatever there is. But if it's something that's not super high in demand, like if this were not as crazy of a demand for them, I'm sure they would have just kept it this way. But genuinely, I don't think they make this move unless there's actually a ton of demand.
Yeah.
So in any case.
And you would know because you're an industry insider.
I'm an industry insider. Alex Goldsmith says, this move makes sense. I understand what's going on here a little bit better than I might have, a year ago. So, yeah, I'm happy for Plan B because they have been absolutely killing it. Azul hit the table again for me fairly recently. They've had some pretty good success with this nice little niche of games, and I think it's not such a little niche in terms of sales, as best I can tell. And this is more evidence of that. So, not surprising at all to see this thing get wider distribution. And if I'm going to pick up an edition of Century, this is probably the one I'd pick up.
Yeah, me too.
So. That's Century Golem Edition. All right, next up, Sean, Kickstarter. And there have been a bunch of big Kickstarters launched of late, but the one that caught our eye, because we've talked about every single game in this series just about, Tiny Epic Zombies, a game of brutal survival. Play as hopeful survivors or the zombies in this 1 to 5 player game featuring competitive and cooperative modes and more item meeples. Item meeples, for folks who don't know, this is from Gameland Games, by the way, were first introduced in Tiny Epic Quest, which was sort of the Legend of Zelda style game in this series, where you could have these little meeples that you could attach gear to. You could attach staffs and swords and shields and whatever else. And in this game, Tiny Epic Zombies, it is shotguns and sniper rifles and an axe and a chainsaw and a machete and all sorts of other fun zombie things. Sean, you've had a chance to peek at this one just briefly. Are you going to back this game?
I don't think so. And I've backed a great many Tiny Epic Kickstarters, but there's something about Tez, that's what we're calling it, Tez.
Yep.
That it looks like just another zombie game. And when I say that, I'm kind of thinking of games like Zombies. Was that Cranial Creations? Is that right? No, I'll have to double check that. There's like 15 different games in that zombie series. And I'm thinking of games like Escape Zombie City. And there's just a very typical zombie game, which is we're in the city, run around, look for loot. Heck, even Zombicide, right? Look for loot and fight off the zombies. And it looks like that's what this is. And that's cool. And if you don't have something like that in your collection, then maybe this could be for you. I like the idea of the item meeples. I thought that was really cool from Tiny Epic Quest. And certainly these are some really cool item meeples. But it's just not doing it for me.
Yeah, and I think some of it is you're right, Sean. It's unclear, as best as I can tell from whatever look we can get, what really sets this apart. Obviously, any Tiny Epic game is set apart by high production levels. Gameland knocks it out of the park when it comes to making a well-produced game. Tiny Epic Western, which is a game you don't like, even that one, the production on it is amazing. The little bullet dice and the really nice Old West style cards. With Tiny Epic Quest, it was the item meeples and the introduction there. So they're known for making these really compact, nice games. The trick, though, is ultimately the gameplay. Now, I think part of what they're hoping is going to set this apart is this ability to play as the zombies, to control the zombies. Are there zombie games that let you do that? I'm sure there are.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, but yeah, I think that's probably the appeal here is that there's these 5 different modes of play. You can play fully cooperative, where the zombies are controlled by the AI. You can play cooperative team play with basically one versus many. One person's controlling the zombies. You can play a cooperative, or rather a competitive free-for-all, and then a competitive free-for-all, but still versus a player controlling the zombies, and then there's a solo mode. Yeah, I'm sure there's some other games that put you in the hands of or put the zombies in your hands, so to speak. I'm just kind of blanking on it. By the way, the Zombies series that I'm thinking of is Twilight Creations. That is the name of the publisher, Twilight Creations.
Yeah, and the thing with this one, Sean, to me is, it's going to have nice components. The trailer for this was really cute and showed that off. The item meeples themselves look cool as always. The police car and motorcycle are rideable. You can put the item meeples on there, so you could have, someone in a police car with a shotgun, which is kind of a cool image, right, for the meeples. And at the end of the day, I haven't found many zombie games that have really captured me so well. And maybe it's just a theme I don't dig or a style of game I don't dig as much, but I back a lot of stuff on Kickstarter, and Tiny Epic has been a series I have consistently backed. I backed Tiny Epic Western even before we reviewed it. I backed Tiny Epic Quest, but I'm going to be passing on this, and it's not because of the price point. It's not because it doesn't look like it's going to be well produced. It's because I can't imagine this will be a game that I'll get to the table. However, I know there's going to be people who are going to try and catch them all, so to speak, and because it's Tiny Epic, and a lot of people like that zombie theme, it doesn't surprise me to see this thing doing ridiculous numbers on Kickstarter. It's already up to almost $300,000 with plenty of time left. It just launched, so
yeah,
it's doing just fine. They don't need our money to have this thing be a success.
So if you want to pick up a copy of Tiny Epic Zombies, or again, Tez for short, you can pick it up for $20 for the retail version or $25 for the deluxe version. Might as well do the deluxe, right?
Oh yeah. There's no question.
And then also need to pay some shipping. Here in the US, it's $5 shipping for either version.
Here's the difference. Look, if you look at the pledge levels, we have at the $20 retail version level, 110 backers as of this recording. The $25 deluxe version has 7,335 backers at this stage. So that's a pretty clear indication. So, yep, not surprising. Not surprising at all, especially with that price difference. So, yeah, you certainly got enough time to back it. It's up there until February 9th. So, about 3 weeks. From when this episode drops, closer to 2.5. But plenty of time if you want to jump on board the Tiny Epic Zombies train. And you know what? If you're a fan of the series, I have no reason to think this won't be a very quality production done by a company known for putting out pretty quality stuff. But not for either of us, I think, Sean.
Apparently not.
All right, that's Tiny Epic Zombies, and that is your look at the news.
So, Alex, I was one of the fortunate few to get a copy of Hentes when it was imported over from Spielworks. And it is a fantastic Euro game designed by Stefan Risthaus, who designed Arkwright, one of your favorite games, Alex.
No, it absolutely is not.
Well, unfortunately, like I said, there weren't a lot of copies that came over here to North America, but our friends over at Tasty Minstrel Games heard how awesome this game is and decided to help us all out, and they're bringing a deluxified version to Kickstarter on January 23rd. In Hentes, you are doing things and stuff, and it's a lot of fun. Hentes is a really interesting action selection game that takes place in the ancient world. There is a really cool time mechanic where time is a resource. I think this is definitely worth checking out. Go on over to Kickstarter on January 23rd, or go over to playtmg.com to find out more about Hentes.
This week we're taking things to a quieter place, to the library, where alphabetization is king and books are super important. We're talking about Ex Libris.
I'd like to think, Alex, that books are always super important, but I'll move on past that. So, Ex Libris is published by Renegade Game Studios. It's designed by Adam P. McIver.
Wait, hold it right there. Wait, designed by who?
Adam P. McIver?
Adam P. McIver. You've been designing too long in the midnight sea. Oh, what's become... All right, I'm done.
All right, can I continue?
Yes.
Okay. The art
I've been waiting 3 weeks for that joke.
Oh, jeez. The art is also done by that person. I don't want to say his name again.
Wait, who is it?
No, I don't remember. Also by Jackie Davis and Anita Osborne.
Wait, but there's another artist on that game, Sean. Who's this third artist?
I said it's the person that designed it. So
is it Adam P. McIver?
Is it out of your system, Alex?
No, it probably. I mean, it might come up again.
Alex Goldsmith, the Michael Scott of the Dukes of Dice. So, what are we talking about? Ex Libris. Ex Libris is a worker placement tableau building game where you are running a library and you are trying to build the best collection amongst all of these different libraries. And the way you're going to do that is every round, you're going to place out your workers to an ever-changing set of action spaces that are going to let you draw cards. And these cards have different books on them of different types that are alphabetically arranged. Some of these action spots are going to let you shelve the books, where you take cards from your hand and place them on your bookshelf, or rather your tableau. And then some of the other action spaces may allow you to kind of manipulate things you've already shelved. There's some weird auction spots you could do. Lots of cool different abilities that are ever-changing throughout the game. Now, the point here, again, is to build this bookshelf, to build this library that is your tableau. So when you take an action that's going to let you shelve a book, you place it down in front of you. If you've already placed a card down, new cards need to be orthogonally adjacent, so left, right, top, bottom. In addition, you need to make sure you don't exceed 3 rows. So basically, your bookshelf has 3 shelves to it. You can go out pretty much as far to the left or right as you want, but only three high. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to put these cards down in alphabetical order. So A to Z, there's multiples of each card. S's are more common than Z's, for example. And each card is going to have somewhere between, I think it's 2 and 4 books. I can't recall if there are any 1-book cards. But these books all have these really interesting titles, kind of very tongue-in-cheek and good for a little guffaw when you're waiting for your turn to come around. And they're all going to be of the same letter. And then based on the alphabet, you may have the S card that is 7 of 9, for example. So what you want to do is, if I put an S card 7 of 9 down, I want to make sure that to the left of it is a lower S card, or maybe I'm going to put a P card down. If I'm really bad at this game, I might put a D card directly in front of it, and now I've kind of cut off a bunch of letters in between. So you're trying to manage where you're putting these cards so that you have the most options available to you. You're not cutting off a whole range of letters or even different numbers within a particular letter. At the end of the game, you're going to score some points based on how structurally sound your bookshelf is, basically the smallest block of it. So or rather the biggest block of it. So if I have kind of cards that kind of sprawl out, I'm not going to get points for those. I'm also going to score points for having the most of a particular type of book, the prestige book, and it's random each game. There's also some banned books, so a certain type of book is banned each game, and that's going to be negative points for you. And then you're also going to score points for your least collected book type. So it wants you to collect a little bit of everything. But then you're also going to get some bonus points for your secret book type that everyone gets dealt at before the game starts. Add up all the points, and whoever has the most points has built the greatest library and is the winner of Ex Libris. Alex, what do you think? Ex Libris.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's this game, for reference, I have a bit of a history with, because I was demoing at Renegade's booth at Gen Con back when this was released. And boy, howdy, was this a hot title.
Oh, yeah.
Man, oh man, was it hot. The line wrapped twice around the booth. People were clawing inside and tearing and ripping other games just to get to Ex Libris.
Oh,
it was
man.
crazy. It was madness, Sean. It was madness. And I didn't understand it because I hadn't heard much about this game prior to Gen Con. And in playing it, I understand some of the hype and not all the hype, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I think this does some things really well. Oddly enough, it's a game that's simultaneously elevated by its production and hurt by its production at the same time. It has a couple of interesting flaws, and it has some things that are really amazing. You referenced the unique books on each card, and it has some really, really cool things about it. And it works well as a game. It has some fun parts to it as a game, as a worker placement game. It's really nice. And this permanent location, this adding new locations mechanic works really well. And I can't put my finger on it, and maybe it'll come to me throughout the course of the review. It's a game that I like but don't love for whatever reason at the end of the day. And it checks off a lot of boxes for me. But it wasn't it wasn't a title I fell in love with for some reason. And I can't tell you why offhand. Maybe this will get revealed more as we get into it. Sean, how did you feel about Ex Libris?
So there was a lot to like about this game. I typically enjoy worker placement. I like the organizing and the alphabetizing. For some reason, it's an oddly soothing exercise for me. It's probably the hundreds and hundreds of hours I've spent organizing collections of magic cards and alphabetizing them, and it was that aspect of the game was enjoyable. I like putting things in order, Alex. I enjoy that. But I guess anyone that probably knows me knows that's probably true. But yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, it wasn't a big wow for me. It's certainly a game that I'm going to want to come back to. It's certainly a game that, again, I found some of those titles really clever and just humorous. I mean, nothing crazy, but enough to keep me entertained when I'm waiting for my turn to come back around. I'm looking at the cards in my hand and be like, oh, that's pretty funny. So yeah, I liked it, and I think I get the hype. I think that it's a better, more enjoyable game than I'm giving it credit for, but it just doesn't do a lot for me. And I was kind of disappointed because I was really looking forward to this. So
Interesting.
Yeah. So real quick, let's just talk about the rulebook. I think the rulebook is pretty good. The nice thing about it is it has an explanation for all the different location cards, and that's the different action spots that you're going to have throughout the game. And then it has an explanation of the different special assistants. So your workers are called assistants, and then you can play a mode of the game. It's the main mode where everyone has a unique special assistant that has some sort of unique power. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want asymmetric powers, you can just play with the reverse side and everyone just gets three basic assistants if you want. But the rulebook explains that. I don't think there were too many issues that I had with the rulebook. I don't know how much experience you had with that.
Oh no, I had a decent amount of experience with the rulebook, and everything is pretty well laid out there. They have all of the abilities explained with exceptions. They have all of the locations spelled out and properly done. I found it easy enough to find what I needed to find when I needed to find it. And I think actually from that perspective, it's a good-looking rulebook. It's a very functional rulebook, and I really didn't have problems with it at all. I think they did very well with that.
And before we go on too much farther, we should note that this was a half a review copy.
Well, it's one review copy.
Well, yeah, but average.
But not for Sean. For Sean. It's for me. I got a review copy, Sean.
Yeah. Yeah, so this
Aren't you proud?
I'm very proud, Alex. You're all grown up and you're all grown up. So yeah, Renegade did provide you a review copy of the game. I was able to get some plays in over at Empire. But I just want to make that known for full disclosure. So Alex, I, with 100% certainty, know what one of your biggest beefs with the production is.
Let's hear it.
It is the description of the action spaces on the locations.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So you have these different locations. They come out randomly throughout the game. And then at the end of a round, most of them get discarded, but the lowest valued one, because they're all numbered, gets to stick around as a permanent location. So each one of these spaces is very different. And they have this little tiny itsy bitsy writing describing what the space does. And some of them aren't particularly intuitive. There's no iconography to really help you. And it's hard to see. It's hard to read. And I know what they're trying to do. It's got fantastic art, and they want the art to kind of stand out on its own. But man, it made gameplay so difficult. And some of these action spaces are kind of convoluted, which is Alex's favorite word. And it's just, it was, everyone who I played with was like, oh, this is terrible. I think it was terrible. I don't know if it needed iconography, if it needed to be bigger, if something. It was really a turnoff for me.
It's a rough issue, right? Because the description in these spaces is they're unique. The tiles are unique from each other. So iconography might help a little, I guess, but what they're describing is typically so unique or resolves in such a different way. I don't know how helpful that's going to be.
Sure.
I genuinely don't think that's going to be that helpful. I know what you're saying. There's always a worry about you don't want to cover up this art that as a company you've paid a decent amount of money for. Like you don't want to block that. At the same time, though, man, playability's got to come first, and it makes it really hard to play. Because it's hard to remember, especially as you get more and more tiles. You get a new permanent location each round. So each round there's more of these spaces to go to. You see more and more new things. Oh, what does this one do again? Let me remind myself. And you have to literally pick up the tile or lean in really close to it to read what's going on. It's a thematic mistake in a sense, Sean, because you have to have good reading glasses to properly read what's going on these tiles in a lot of cases.
Right.
And for me, my eyesight sucks. My right eye, I had cataract surgery in it. It had to get, it has a fresh lens in it, and I can see far with that eye, but not close. And so sometimes when text is really small in games, I feel like an old person. I just can't read it that well. And this was brutal. It was so brutal, Sean. It was so bad. And the bummer about it is, on a lot of other fronts, the production in this game is top notch.
Yeah.
The custom meeples. So for each individual library, they have their own tile that you get. And they have their own worker associated with it. So you have like the clockwork golem, and you have the gelatinous cube, and you have the ghost, and you have all these awesome custom-shaped meeples. So cool. First-player marker was a little underwhelming in that context, but it's better than a lot of first-player markers. I'm not going to rag on that too much. I've heard other people complain about that. That's not a huge deal. but that part's really cool. The care and detail to come up with clever names for all of these books in alphabetical order is remarkable.
Sure.
How many books are in there, Sean? It's got to be like 300, 400, 500 books.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
it's
there's
crazy. It's a ton, and so the attention to detail to get that right is cool. And the iconography in a lot of places is great. I love how it has on the top of the cards a summary of what exactly is in each card and what number it is in that letter. So it makes that part really easy. It's easy to build your library, and the tiles, it just falls flat on its face with this stuff. And I don't know if it's that they needed simpler descriptions of the action spaces, or they just needed to bite the bullet and make that text larger. But man, was that rough. It was rough in terms of playing this. And it definitely holds the game back, which is a shame because otherwise it's an amazing production. I all around amazing production. Art is wonderful in this game. The meeples are really cool. Yeah, it drags the whole thing down, Sean. Did you feel that way about the rest of the production with this?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's fantastic. I think everything else, it's what you come to expect from Renegade Game Studios. And this was just a really unfortunate oversight or something. I don't know. It really made it difficult. And like you were saying with the iconography, and maybe I'm just kind of belaboring the point. Yeah, I think because each location is so different from the others, there's not a whole lot you can do. But maybe if there's just like these reminder icons, it's like, hey, this is a spot that happens to let you draw cards. And it lets you shelve X number of books. Or this is a spot where it lets you, I don't know, something needed to be different here. And I agree. I think that this kind of held it back a bit.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Gameplay-wise, Sean, where did you fall on that?
So I don't know that there was a whole lot I found interesting in the worker placement. I mean, in that respect, it was, I think, fairly typical. I did enjoy the fact that, again, you're having these different spots rotate. And some of these different locations, you might only have one action space available on them. They might have 2 or 3 to take that particular action. They do a good job of limiting certain of them based on the player count. And man, there is some competition for going first. And there's a spot where you can take first player for the next round. And it's really cool because I can take it right away, but I'll only get to draw 1 card. Whereas if I wait till I place my last worker, I get to draw 3 cards. Basically draw a card for each worker that you've placed out. But again, if I'm waiting to draw a bunch of cards and go there, someone could beat me to it. And because there may be a certain type of location you're really waiting for, you may be really incentivized to grab that first player spot. Like, for example, maybe I've just got a hand of terrible cards and I really just want to discard them and draw. So like I think it's the Wishing Well, discard X cards, draw X+1, and I think you can shelve one of them or something like that.
There's the book collector. That's a space. The book collector is a space. The book collector is a space where there's a card out there with a bunch of symbols on it, and you can discard cards, matching those symbols to draw fresh cards.
Right. So it's like, man, I really need to get rid of this hand. So there are times you're really competing for certain spots, and I think that's good in a worker placement game. You shouldn't feel like you're getting exactly what you want every time. The nice thing, though, especially because there's these random spots. I mean, you may have a flop of action spots that are very minimal number. But what's nice is you have these home action spots on your board. So even if everything's taken up or you don't care what's out there, you can always place a worker at home to either draw a card or shelve a card. So that's definitely nice. So yeah, I found that interesting, but the worker placement itself wasn't blowing me away. There was nothing, I think, super special about the worker placement. So in regards to just the worker placement element, what did you think?
So it's interesting. You're saying, are you saying that the action spaces themselves might be interesting, but the worker placement and the thought process around that is less interesting to you?
It wasn't, there was no innovation to the worker placement, I guess is what I'm getting at. It was just kind of your run of the mill worker placement, which is fine. It's fine because I don't think that that's the focus of the game. I think the focus of the game is the tableau building.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I would say I found some of the worker placement spots interesting, and I find this idea of, well, for one, you have 2 different kinds of action spaces, right? You have the instant action spaces, something that happens immediately, and you have the ones that resolve at the end of the round. Some of those I think are actually particularly interesting. There's one It's not called rummage sale, but it's something along those lines. It might be yard sale or something along those. Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark, where you're going to offer cards to other players, and if they take the card, they can shelve the card, but then you get to draw 2 cards as a result of them taking it.
Right.
That's an interesting action space to me. The action space of the gambling den, where you place a worker and then name a card type and take all cards of that type if they're the most of that symbol. Other players can place there later and compete with you there. So there's a flip off the top of the deck gambling element to it. There's the book collector, that where you're discarding cards that might be less valuable. You want to discard banned books, so a way to get rid of banned books. And draw others. And some of those you want to race to be first at, right? Some of those work better when you're first. Some of them are better when you're second to a space. I think there's some interest in the worker placement there. And I like that you have this home board always in front of you where, well, if you don't like the actions available, you can always go here to shelve a book or draw a card, which in some cases is the best possible move you have and isn't a bad move to take, because you might be playing 2 of your library focus and getting a whole bunch of points that way. I think there's enough interest. I agree with you that that part doesn't feel innovative. I think what's more innovative about it, Sean, is the holdover, the fact that you have this one location that becomes permanent each round.
Yeah.
That part feels innovative to me.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I mean, it feels kind of like Lords of Waterdeep, where it doesn't happen automatically, but you're buying buildings to expand what's happening. It was a little, I guess it's not the point of this game. I would have liked to have gained more workers in some way, shape, or form. But again, I don't think the worker placement, even though that's like the driving mechanic, it's not the focus. So
right.
I'm okay with, I agree. I agree with what you're saying. There were some interesting spots. There's like an auction house where you have to, if you discard a certain number of cards, and then you get all the cards that are available on the auction house at the end of the round. Yeah, there were certainly interesting things, but I wasn't wowed by the worker placement, I guess.
Fair enough. And where I'll agree with you is the better puzzle or the more interesting part of the game is definitely in the tableau building.
Correct.
In the trying to arrange this library and fit things in alphabetical order. Alphabetization is a game mechanic. Works actually pretty well here.
Yeah, no, I agree. So looking at that tableau building that bookshelf, that library, you have to be really careful in how you do this. I mean, when you're taking these actions, you have to consider, what kind of books am I looking to get? Am I looking to avoid the banned books? Am I looking to fulfill my personal objectives? But also, where do these books fall on my tableau? Maybe I only have N and an O, and I have this really cool Z. Well, what am I going to do with this Z? Am I going to place it now? Because if I place it, it needs to be orthogonally adjacent to books I've already placed. Certainly, I don't want to place it to the right of my O, because now I've just cut off everything between O and Z. But maybe I place it below the O, but now that means that I can't really, I can still build to the right of stuff, but I'm going to lose out on my structure bonus or stability bonus. So that's kind of an extreme example, but I think that that's an interesting puzzle that you're playing there. How are you shelving these books? Because there is a race. The game ends the round after someone has reached a certain number of books in their library, and it's dependent on the number of players. So you don't want to be passing up shelving opportunities, because every time you're allowed to shelve a card, if you're foregoing that shelving, you're kind of missing out. You're being less efficient than you might be otherwise. But maybe you get this card and it's not an ideal number, or rather an ideal letter, and you're like, but do I want to not shelve this and waste that shelving opportunity? Or maybe I just shelve it. I found that really interesting. And I found myself working really hard to fulfill everything, to have the most stable collection, to win out on the favored book type, to get a bunch of everything. So my variability bonus is really high. I really like that aspect of the game, and I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, I agree with you. Those endgame conditions drive some interesting play. You know, this fits in perfectly alphabetically, but it has 2 banned book symbols. Am I really willing to take the negative penalties just to have something that's more of a structural fit? Probably not. But it's that balancing act. You want to do a little bit of everything. You want to make sure you're playing to your library focus. You want to make sure you're winning that race to have the most of the featured text. And it can be tricky sometimes. What I've found it's interesting, Sean, and I don't know if this is true, but in the games I've played of this, the player with the most books in all cases will win.
Yes, go on.
And no, I mean, that's what I found is I haven't found a situation where someone has significantly fewer books or a few, like 3 fewer books, doesn't end up winning the game or doesn't end up having the best score.
Are you talking about number of books or number of cards?
Interesting. I was specifically talking about number of cards in front of them.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree. I have won every game of this I've played, and I typically was shelving like a mad person, just shelving like crazy, frequently having 2 or 3 more cards by the game end than the next player. Because at that point, unless they're all banned books, you're going to be doing okay, right? You've got to, especially if you're trying to do a good job of having a little bit of everything, because those are actually worth in some ways the most points, because it's worth 3 points for the book type you have the fewest of, excluding the banned book type. So yeah, I think it's possible that the bigger your collection, the more cards you have in your bookshelf, the more you're significantly more likely to win. There may be some corner cases where that's not the case. Maybe I've got the most cards, but all of my cards only have 2 books. And Alex, you have 3 cards less than me, but all of your cards are 3 and 4 books apiece. So maybe that's kind of the corner case. But for the most part, given the distribution of the cards, that'd be pretty hard to happen, I think.
Yeah, and for me, there are some roles in this game that put you in a very good position to get a ton of cards in that bookshelf. And I don't know. I mean, maybe I need more plays of this. It's certainly hard off of the number of plays I've had of this to say for sure that is your one path to victory. But it feels tricky in that sense. It's a disappointing because the game doesn't punish you really much for not being in alphabetical order. You still get to flip that card over and get shelf stability bonuses. And in some cases, you can avoid banned book penalties just by, I don't like this card enough. Flip, it's flipped over. So
sure,
it can let you off the hook in some ways because of how it handles it. I almost wish the game was more punishing for lack of alphabetization or gave more credit for having a fully alphabetized bookshelf. I think that would help maybe balance it out so that the player who's not just wildly shoving books into their bookshelf just wins more often than not.
And I think that there is definitely a luck element to that too, because I think that if I'm just wildly shelving books versus getting the cards I need, I mean, what I was doing was I spent the first couple rounds just drawing a bunch of cards. That was just my focus, not even shelving, but just having a bunch of available cards in hand to be able to respond to any situation more or less. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I did okay. So
well, you won. So I'd say it's better than okay.
Well, sure.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. Like the gameplay is engaging and this alphabetization problem is engaging, and it almost feels undermined by the game end in a weird way. It feels undermined by the final scoring and the final result. And it's hard for me to wrap my head around that, but I think it definitely sours me a little on the game too. So yeah, I think a lot of stuff going on. I think I'm higher on the worker placement than you, but I think I reached that same conclusion as to the final feel to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, Alex. Do you think that this is a thematic game?
Yes, quite thematic. Very.
No,
thematic.
I would agree. I think that this whole idea of building a library and alphabetizing and the fact that there are like these banned books that are negative points, and I don't know. I thought it was really thematic, and I think that that's certainly a strength of the game. I mean, it doesn't make sense that it's almost like when you shelve a book, you're like gluing it into place because you can't easily rearrange them absent some sort of action space. But that's fine. I mean, for the sake of gameplay, that needs to happen. But I think the other thing too, and this is probably the right spot to talk about it, is I mentioned before, these book titles. They're just cute. They're clever. They're good for a little bit of entertainment when you're waiting for your turn, especially in a higher player count game. Here's a couple of them, Alex. The ones that are pretty interesting. There's 2 books. One is called How to Write Good, and the second book is called How to Write Gooder. There's a book called Not a Guide That Won't Help with Double Negatives. And then if you're looking in the U's, you're going to find the unofficial Ex Libris strategy guide. But if you're looking in the O's, you're going to find the official Ex Libris strategy guide.
Nice.
Let's see here. What are some others? There's the Milkable Mammals, just kind of weird. Yesterday Never Came. And then one of my favorites, An Incomplete Guide to Procrastination.
Nice. Yeah. Clever touches and helps the thematic feel of it. and this idea of alphabetizing and rearranging books, and that feels perfectly thematic. The action tiles have thematic names. It all works together really well. Yeah, no issues there at all.
Do we have any thoughts over in the guild, Alex?
Oh, we sure did, and this was certainly a popular enough game. Chris K. Ghidorah said, on the positive side, it takes the relatively dry theme of managing library shelves and makes it fun with great card art, cute book names, and the best part in my mind, the special assistant meeples. Gelatinous Cube for the win. Yeah. Negatives. The special location text, he references that as well. Unless players know the game well, they're going to be craning their necks repeatedly to read what the locations do. Apart from this production quip, some of the special assistant powers range from wow to I guess I can use that. And finally, I didn't like the fact that there's little player interaction and almost no tension. I thought that to build my tableau of game shelves, I was really going to have to make some tough choices. But in the end, everyone in our 3-player game was able to build their shelves for nearly the same amount of points. A game that employs a similar type of tableau building that I really enjoy is Matryoshka. It's tense, has interesting decisions, and plays in half the time. And I've heard good things about Matryoshka from Josh, my buddy at work, and I think you've talked about it as well as Sean. Yes?
Oh, man. I love Matryoshka. I think it's fantastic.
Yep.
From Terra Nova Games, which we actually have a YouTube video about, if you want to go check that out. Yeah, so we didn't really talk about the special player powers. And yeah, definitely some of them were very situational. Others, like I had the Fire Imp in one game, and you can go to a location that has books on it, and you can burn all the books, I think, to get two shelvings. And I definitely rode that to victory. I burned. And others were just, I mean, like I said, very situational. So I don't know necessarily what kind of balance we're talking about. Certainly I haven't played enough to say, oh, this one's completely underpowered or this one's OP or whatever. But I think I take his point.
Yeah, I like what they do, by the way, mechanically with the draft of that, where in reverse player order, you draft out of a number of these at the start of the game. Instead of the typical give 2 to each player and they pick 1, it's sort of a nice way of balancing it out so people have a crack at some of the more powerful abilities. So I liked how they handled that. But
sure.
I agree with what you're saying. It's unclear whether they're balanced. Again, hard to say one way or the other. Chad Jacobson says, I've only had one play of this one, and it was a 3 for me. Just seemed like it didn't quite know what it wanted to be. Aside from the baffling, nigh unreadable font choices on the room tiles, the production is delightful and immersive. The theme drew me in, as unusual as it is, but the randomness of the way the rooms came out, coupled with the inability to plan and the way this helped some player powers much more than others, not to mention how you could get totally screwed fighting for first player, hoping a good room would come out next turn, and be disappointed, all just left me cold. So, yeah, not a huge amount of guild praise for this one, Sean.
Yeah, and it's been out for a good amount of time since Gen Con. So, all right, well, let's head into our final thoughts. Alex, why don't you do the honors?
Yeah, so we rate things at the Dukes of Dice on a 6-point scale. 1 being bad, very bad, so bad, not good. 6 being, oh my god, this is amazing, I have to play this again at my first opportunity. It's a top 10 of all time. This one for us is probably going to be more in the middle of the scale. And let me read through a few I'm considering with this one, Sean. So we have a 2. Game has some merit but has significant issues. The font is not good, or sorry, the text size I should say, but it doesn't drag it down that much, and there's enough fun there. 3 is game is okay, not exciting, we'll play in the right situation. 4 is a good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the Duchy. And I've been struggling with this one. I've had different scores in my head for this during the course of the review, between a 3 and a 4. And let's see. I think ultimately with this one, it's gonna be a 3. Game is okay, not exciting. We'll play in the right situation. It is, I think, a better game than that gives credit for, and our code for that in the Duchy is not 3.5. It's a high 3, Sean. This is a high 3 game. It just falls a little short of that. I think I've had enough disappointment with how the end game of this is felt, or the end result of this is felt, with how alphabetization is engaging and fun during the game and a cool puzzle, but feels like it doesn't matter based on how end game scoring works. And then you combine the small text size. Those are the negatives. On the positive side, it's an amazingly immersive game. The theme is unique and clever and well integrated, and you can tell this thing was produced with a heck of a lot of love. I just don't see it coming out to the table that much. It just doesn't seem like a standby, and it doesn't seem like one I feel the need to have around. Will I get rid of it? I don't know. Maybe. I do occasionally get rid of games. I got rid of Arboretum, and I got some crap at work about that because Josh apparently really, really wanted Arboretum.
The game is super good.
Yeah, that's what people keep telling me. But I don't know. It's not in my collection anymore, Sean, and it's really hard to get, apparently. So
Yep.
Good luck with that, everyone. So I don't think I'll get rid of it, but I also don't know how many times I'll actually end up playing it, which is a shame because I think there's a lot of potential here and some really good ideas and some great production. And there's something missing. There's something missing here, Sean. So ultimately a 3, but a high 3.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. It's a 3 for me too. Game is okay. Not exciting. We'll play in the right situation. And what's coming to mind, and you didn't play this, Alex. You were gone when we reviewed Manhattan Project Energy Empire. Our buddy John from John Gets Games guested that episode. And it felt similar in the sense that I'm like, yeah, this is cool. I'm enjoying this. I like playing this, and I like the things that I'm doing. But there's just something missing here for me. It just didn't scratch all those itches, even though I can't point to anything in the course of gameplay that I'm like, oh, this is terrible. Again, other than the small font on the action spaces. But I enjoyed all my games of it, and I had fun, and I do well at this game, and it has a lot of elements that I would really like this. And I think that I'm in the middle of my first play, or maybe towards the end of that first play, and I'm like, oh, I think I'm probably going to wind up giving this a 5. And it's not that things got worse. It's not that there were bad things that happened, but just looking at it now, I'm like, yeah, I don't have a desire to own this. I'm glad that Empire has it, and maybe there'll be an occasion to play it, but I don't know that it's a game that I'm going to look to bring out. So that's why I'm saying it's a 3. Game is okay, not exciting. We'll play in the right situation. But I really feel like I'm underselling the game. I really feel like there's something to this game that a lot of people would like and should like. And for whatever reason, it's just not doing it for me.
Yeah, I think some credence is lent to that, though, for me. You know, it sort of reinforces my thoughts to see the guild have the reaction it does, and to hear from you that you had a similar experience that, I always worried when we were back in New Mexico that sometimes our play experiences would affect each other and would affect our reviews, and we'd end up in the same place. And we did not play this together at any point. And to come to that same kind of space it lets me think that I'm more on the right track than not. I agree with you. It may feel like underselling the game, but there's something here that isn't clicking for some reason. So I don't know. I didn't expect to be at a 3, but I am. So.
I didn't either. I thought it was going to be a 4, maybe a 5, but alas, it is not. All right, well, that's going to do it for the Duke's review of Ex Libris from Renegade Game Studios. 3 from Alex and a 3 from Sean.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Duke's Double Take.
All right, this week we have a jam-packed full. Now, Sean, I'm going to check if we need to have a name change here, because I've seen a sextuple take is what we've typically gone to. Is hextuple take the better term for this?
I don't think so.
Should be Duke's hextuple take or Duke's sextuple take?
I don't know that hextuple is a word.
Well, it's not, but it could be. And hexes are in games, and it means 6 sides, I guess. Now,
sure.
Sean's not digging it. All right.
No.
Duke's sextuple take it is. First one we're going to talk about is episode 122, What a Wonderful World, Terraforming Mars. And this is a big double take, Sean, and they aren't always, but this one's pretty big. At the time, you gave this one a strong 5. You said on gameplay and mechanisms alone, it was a 6, and it might be a game you enjoyed more than, say, Scythe, but it was held back enough by other things, and there were just enough factors that you couldn't quite bite the bullet and go with a 6. I gave this one a more of a standard 5, less of an enthusiastic 5. I said component issues held it back, and it's a brilliantly designed game. I just don't enjoy it enough to get it quite to that 6 level. Sean, have you played Terraforming Mars since?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, you
I've played this game a ton. I've played it a ton. Although I have not played with either of the expansions. Venus Next, which just came out. And then, why am I blanking on the other one?
Hellas something? Hellas?
Oh, yeah, the Hellas and Elysia
yep, that was it.
expansion. Elysium, I think. Yeah, no, I haven't played either of those, but I've played it a ton since the review. And in fact, it found its way, Terraforming Mars did, onto my top 10 games of all time. So I've retroactively given it a 6. It's a 6. It's amazing. This game is fantastic. I love it so much, and I wish I could play it more often, and I wish I could play with the expansions relatively soon. I don't know how I haven't, considering this is our buddy Nick's favorite game, and he brings it out every opportunity he gets. I usually give him crap for it, but it's super good. This game is so good. Oh, I love it.
It is really, really good, and I still have the same thoughts I do. I don't love it to the degree that it takes to get it to that 6. This ain't gonna be a boxcars. It's still a 5. It's a great game, and what's interesting is it doesn't fit that 5 perfectly, because I will turn down a play of it in a good amount of situations.
Ugh.
Well, don't me.
Yeah,
it's a long game.
It's done.
It takes a long time to play.
Not. Have you played when everyone has played this multiple times? And everyone just knows exactly what they're doing? Have you played in that situation?
I think so. I think when we played with Patrick Hillier and Suzanne that one time,
I think
everyone had played multiple times.
Yeah, you were the weak link. But yeah, go on.
Whoa, man. God. And no, it's just, I think for me, there's an attention deficit disorder element of things where if a game goes past a certain length, it's going to be hard for me to truly love it. I know it's brilliantly designed. I know it is. And it is fun. It is definitely fun. It's not fun enough to get it to that level, and the component issue drives me crazy every time. Every time I see that, it makes me upset. Seeing that issue with that game, it's such a waste and such an issue for me. And I get why it's still the favorite game of all time for not just Nick. Plenty of at least 2 people on the guild, as we'll get to the comments later, named it their favorite game of all time too. It certainly has had staying power. The game's not going anywhere. This is a hobby board gaming staple. For sure. Totally get it. And deserving of that recognition. And it's so interesting to me that it will forever be tied with Scythe in my mind, because they both came out in the same year and there was that conversation. Are you with Scythe? Are you with Terraforming Mars? Are you with Scythe? Are you with Terraforming Mars? I'm still with Scythe. I'm still with Scythe.
Weird. Because to me, it's the comparison between this and Great Western Trail, because they came out so much closer together and both from Stronghold Games. But that's fine.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. We'll get to that later.
Let's go over to the Guild. The Guild had plenty of things to say about Terraforming Mars. Scott Sexton said, imagine, if you will, if Phil Eklund made games that had approachable rule sets. You'd pretty much have Terraforming Mars. I've played it a couple dozen times over the past year, and I'm hoping that the expansions give me reason to play it even more. Sadly, I've reached the point where I think that the multiplayer game is sort of solvable with certain corporations when you go card heavy and ignore the game board. It just doesn't feel right when the winner of the game does as little terraforming as possible. Even with some balance wonkiness, I still find the game to be quite good. I strongly suspect Terraforming Mars is going to become something of a franchise game, and I'm hopeful that the future products will have better legs. It's a solid Ducal 4 for me, pending expansions. And there was a moment at Gen Con, Alex, when I was hanging out with Jake and Danielle from Draft Mechanic, and a bunch of other people were there. We were doing a bottle share. That's what it is. I may have had a couple beers in me at that point. I may have been a little inebriated, and Stephen Bonacore was there. And I had my arm around his shoulder, and it was like, dude, you are the conservator of Terraforming Mars. This is a ticket to ride where you can just keep cranking out new maps, new cards, and you have this responsibility. So go and do it, sir, and do it well.
Okay.
Have I told that story before?
No, I don't think I've heard that story specifically.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny. That is funny.
I'm like, bro, listen, bro, listen to me. Terraforming Mars is your baby, bro. Bro, it's your baby.
Oh, man. Did you give him crap about the player boards? Did you in that moment?
Oh yeah. No, he knows. He's like, what do you want me to do? I'm selling millions of copies.
Yeah. I'll be worried about that all the way to the bank.
Yeah.
Yep. Fair enough. Chris Holmes says, I have played Terraforming Mars more than 30 times, surpassed only by Netrunner and Blood Bowl. My friends and I really enjoy trying to cobble together the best plan for saving humanity. Thanks for the tip on the Terraforming Colony insert from Meeple Realty. pledge your fealty, Sean, to Meeple Realty. It's been a long time since I said that one. Venus Next is next. He's excited. He is all in.
So Sylvain Lacroix said, Terraforming Mars is my favorite game of all time. I've played a lot of games in my life, and I can honestly say that this one is the one. And then he has some issues with component quality, some graphic design issues, which we've talked about ad nauseum. He finishes up by saying, now where the game shines, it's the gameplay. It's incredible. No two games are alike. Again, detractors will say that the luck of the draw makes it random, but I will say that the draft really helps out. Also, managing the cards for mid/long range strategies is the key to success. So you will need to adjust your strategy with the cards you have and with the choices you make. In the end, this is a really awesome game. I give it a rare 6. It's really top 10 material. Number 1, in fact.
And the one. He's going to get hitched to this game, Sean. It's the one, man. Willie Williams, it's also his favorite game of all time. He says there's only 2 negatives for him about the game, though. First, I know 2 people who have turned it into a 5+ hour game, and I've come close to violence because of it. After dragging the game on for nearly 6 hours reading the newly discovered flavor text, while I just want to get to bed, makes me want to hurt you. Secondly, I refuse to play without some type of resource tray. After having a game destroyed by someone walking over to greet people an hour in was harsh.
Oh, yeah.
Harsh. You know a game is successful, but you also know a game has a fundamental issue when there seems to be a whole industry around Terraforming Mars resource trays.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
it's insane.
No, absolutely.
There's how many different companies have made those?
There's probably literally 8. Literally 8 different options, not exaggerating in the slightest. And they all probably are doing well because there's such a high demand for this game. And this game being Terraforming Mars, which I'm moving up to a 6, which I've already kind of done. And Alex, you're keeping it at a 5. What's next?
Next is the one Sean actually pairs up Terraforming Mars with in his mind from episode 124, Happy New Steer, Great Western Trail. And at the time, Sean, you gave this one a 6. You said, I love how many ways there are to truly play this game. I gave it a 5 as well. I said I enjoyed how the mechanisms of this interlock. I liked that merry-go-round. It was another one of those that was liked really strongly, wasn't enough love to get it quite to a 6. This was maybe during the Sean Santa Claus giving out 6s all the time. Period. No, I don't think so. No, that's fair.
This is it's our boy, Alexander Pfister.
Yep. So, Sean, have you played this game since?
I have. I've played it multiple times since the review. In fact, the most recent time was right before Christmas. I haven't really had a chance to talk about it on the show, but mentioned them earlier from Draft Mechanic, Jake and Danielle. They were out visiting Jake's family at Christmas time, and they came out to Empire one night. And they had not played Great Western Trail. So I said, hey, I'll teach it to you. And we got a game in. And yeah, I love this game. I think it is so good. And to me, the thing I love about this, right, is the engine building. There's a lot of games where you're doing your engine building, one of my favorite things you can do in games. And then it feels like before you've really enjoyed this engine that you've created, the game's over, right? For me, the fact that you get to just kind of churn through that engine a couple times towards the end of the game is really satisfying. And here it's, building certain buildings, crafting your hand, because there's a deck management of different cows that you have, and you get to run through that engine a couple times. And I've heard for some people that they feel like the game is over and then you're still playing a couple turns. But for me, it's that, like I said, it's that experience of, oh man, I can't believe the game just ended. No, in this, you get to keep just churning that wheel, and I love it. I think it's fantastic.
So I have played this actually in the time since we reviewed this.
Ooh,
in fact, I taught this game.
Oh boy!
In the time since we I know. Oh boy, is right.
How did that go?
Well, poor Anthony was subjected to it. This was at Dice Tower Con this past year. And he had, with Anthony at the time, hadn't played a lot of kind of the new hotness and even some of the standbys. For us at that time, Great Western Trail didn't fit the bill of new hotness, right? It had been out for several months, but for some people hadn't played it yet. And so, set it up, figured out, refreshed my memory, taught it, played it, and it went fine. It's still a 5. Nothing about this changed in my mind. I enjoy how the mechanisms fit together. I think it's a brilliantly designed game. It's not my favorite Pfister by any means. It's nowhere close. But it works well for what it's trying to do, and I understand the appeal, and I understand why it's as successful as it is. For your money, though, Sean, Terraforming Mars is the better one of the two?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm definitely scratching different itches with these games. I mean, certainly Terraforming Mars has a decent amount of engine building as well. There's, I feel like there's combos in Terraforming Mars too, but I feel like there's just more combo goodness in Great Western Trail. It's more of your classic Euro in that sense. But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna give the edge to Terraforming Mars. I think it's got more legs than Great Western Trail, but I love me some Great Western Trail.
Yeah, I think they're both fantastic games, but I agree with you. Terraforming Mars certainly seems to have the bigger staying power. Yeah, and I like Great Western Trail a lot. I don't see myself being as willing to play it or as likely to play it if I had those two side by side as I would, say, Terraforming Mars. I would rather play Terraforming Mars than Great Western Trail. So it's a higher 5 for me. Terraforming Mars is than Great Western Trail is. But I think they're both great games.
So over in the guild, Jimmy Miro says, Great Western Trail is my number 9 favorite of all time. I was unsure about it at first. The game length, about 90 minutes to 3 hours, depending, and the listed weight, 3.7, are not really in my group's wheelhouse, but I loved the theme and the mechanisms, so I went for it, and boy, am I glad I did. Sure, there's a lot going on in Great Western Trail. There's deck building, point-to-point movement, tile placement, hand management, etc., but the mechanisms themselves are pretty simple, so once everyone has the rhythm down, the game doesn't feel that heavy. As for the length, the game is long, but each player's turn is so fast that the hours just seem to breeze by. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Scott Sexton, playing Debbie Downer again, says, historical and geographical inaccuracies aside, Great Western Trail doesn't really do much to excite me. If I'm going to play a sort of rondel game, I'd rather be playing Concordia. If I want to play a Western-themed Euro game, I'd rather be playing Carson City. I also happen to fall into that 1% of gamers who isn't gaga for AP. So Great Western Trail is a great big meh as far as I'm concerned. Is anybody even playing this game anymore? A forgettable Ducal 3 for me. And I think people are still playing this game. Not to the extent that Terraforming Mars, but I think people are still playing that game. So, I don't know. I get some of his concerns. AP can certainly be an issue in this game, but I dig it thematically. And I don't know. I'd rather play this over Concordia any day. But then again, I'm lower on Concordia than you are, Sean.
I'm trying to think, how is Concordia a rondel style game? I think you might mean in terms of the deck management.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Because that's certainly the case.
Yep.
All right. And then Evan said, for me, Great Western Trail is my favorite game of all time, and I can't place my finger on why. This is easily a Ducal 6 for me. It is my most played game of 2017, and is a game that me and many more in my group wish to play over and over. I love the deck building, the art, the touch of randomness, and the tension that provides when you discard cows close to Kansas City, trying to get just the cow you need to reach the right city and either get it or just miss. I just find every bit of the game enjoyable except for the box cover, which is atrocious. Absolutely agree with that. I honestly think that if you put a bad box cover on Terraforming Mars and a great box cover on Great Western Trail, the popularity of the two games might be inverted. I've heard of so many people who avoided Great Western Trail simply due to the unappealing aesthetic, which is a shame.
It's not a great box.
It's not.
It's not a great box, but I don't necessarily agree that if Terraforming Mars had like the equivalent, like I guess like an astronaut, like cowboy kind of, I don't know, in that style.
A space cowboy, if you will.
A space cowboy. I don't think if they're flipped that would help Great Western Trail's popularity that much. I think the style of game, that theme of Terraforming Mars and how that plays out speaks more to people than the theme and how Great Western Trail is done. So I don't think its box cover alone is the reason for the difference between the two games. That's my read.
Fair enough. All right, well, that's our double take of Great Western Trail. Still a 6 from me and a 5 from Alex. Last one, Alex. Bring us home.
Chaotic Goods was the episode 125, and the game was Role Player. Sean, you gave this an incredibly solid 5, which basically was a high 5 and just short of a 6. You said if there's an expansion, it would be needed to keep it at that level. I said at 4. It's a design achievement, but the lack of replayability wears thin with this one. Decisions not as engaging as I wanted them to be. And I have played this one since. Sean, have you played this one since?
I certainly have. Played it a bunch since.
And is there an expansion for this one? I'm trying to remember.
So there was a Kickstarter for the expansion. It has not fulfilled yet. I did back it, and I am patiently waiting for my copy.
Did it, even without the expansion to this point, is it still a 5?
I don't think so. I think it's temporarily fallen to a 4. I think that it's very possible when the expansion comes out, I'll bump it back up to a 5. There is some replayability issues now that I've played it a bunch of times. It is a really cool puzzle. You're basically drafting these dice to put on an RPG character sheet. And based on what colors you take, based on the pip values, you're trying to achieve all these different objectives. It's really cool. I think the mechanics of this game are really interesting. I like it a lot. But at this point, the replayability, I'm not super excited to bring it out. But I think when that expansion comes out, that's definitely going to change.
Interesting. What does the expansion do? I'm trying to remember that really spices this up.
So if I recall correctly, there are monsters that you can now go out and fight. So it just adds a little extra element to the game. I think there's more equipment cards that you can collect, and there's another element to it. I'm just kind of blanking on it right now. But it certainly seems like it's going to add some replayability, and I hope it does.
I have played this one since and still dig it. However, and this is a debate that's come up with this, I will play Sagrada, I think, over Role Player.
Okay.
And I get the appeal of the theme of Role Player over Sagrada, but there's an elegance to Sagrada that allows me to kind of bypass in my mind the lack of replayability for some reason. I don't know what it is, but I like the look of Sagrada. I like the elegance of Sagrada, and I'm more inclined to want to have that in my collection than I am to want to have Role Player in my collection. I think it's conceptually an achievement and a good amount of fun, and stays at a 4 for me. It's not budging from that spot. I definitely side on the Sagrada side of this equation, though. Have you played Sagrada yet? I'm trying to remember.
No, I think we talked about it when you mentioned the recent plays. Have not gotten to the table, and I'm not sure why. I think it's something I'd enjoy, but still need to do that.
I think it's that for me, it's the elegant touches that Sagrada adds. That it's just a little bit more elegant of a game to me than Role Player is. That has me enjoy it a bit more. I enjoy the flow of play with a game like Sagrada more than I do with Role Player, but I think they're both very high-quality titles. I get why they're compared.
Sure.
Dice drafting is at the core of both. It makes sense to me. So, Guild had some thoughts on this one too, though, Sean.
Yeah, what did they say?
Ossian Gur says, I actually backed Role Player based on a banner ad on BGG, and absolutely no regrets. It's definitely a solid 5 on the Ducal scale for me. I just like the puzzly nature of every die placement. Each move feels important, and at the end, you got some nice imbalanced characters to tell stories about. It hasn't hit the table in a while, but I backed the expansion on Kickstarter on day 1, and soon I expect it to come back into the rotation. Can't wait to bring these characters out on something that feels more like an adventure. And maybe the expansion helps on that front for me, Sean, because I never told stories about these characters. It just didn't. The thematicness of it didn't bleed through as much as I might have wanted it to. And for you seem to be higher on that than I was, even way back when.
Yeah, because you're mixing a race with a class, with an alignment, with a backstory, and sometimes they didn't make sense. And so in my mind, I was always kind of creating these backstories to reconcile all these different things. So yeah. Michael Farenbrook said, played this one during an Extra Life marathon last year, and it was one of my favorite games of the day. I haven't played Sagrada yet, but from what I've seen, I don't think I would ever want to pick it over Role Player on the basis of theme and depth of strategy. And he's going to give it a Ducal 5 out of 6.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo, more on my side of the Sagrada Role Player debate. He says, I can't put my finger on it, but Role Player doesn't excite me as much as Sagrada does. Doesn't make sense. I love the unique theme of Role Player, and it has all of the extras, but perhaps I just like the streamlined beauty that is Sagrada. Plus, my wife loves the theme, which means it gets to the kitchen table a lot. And I think, BJ, you actually hit the same point I was hitting. It's that streamlined nature to it. It's the elegance of it that has it appeal more to me. But I think they're both, again, high-quality games and worthy games. So, yeah, I'm in the same place on all three of these, Sean. Not much of a change for me, but I've actually, I think this is the first Duke's Sextuple take where I've played all of the games in the year since.
Yeah.
So that says a lot. That says a lot to me.
Yeah, no, these are 3 really solid games. For me, Role Player is dropping from a 5 to a 4, but it's very, very tentative for, very temporary for, if you will. We'll see when the expansion comes out. I'm sure I will report back on that front. So
Fair enough.
well, that does it for our Duke Sextuple take. Sextuple, either way. Alex, do you consider yourself a liar?
Never.
Well, then never mind, Alex. I guess we won't talk about Spoils of War from Arcane Wonders, which incorporates a little bit of Liar's Dice into a very rich Viking theme where you're trying to collect a bunch of plunder from your victims. Alex, you sure I can't convince you to maybe lie a little bit?
No, I'd never lie.
Well, cool. Let's totally not play Spoils of War together. No, I think this game is fantastic, Alex. You've had a chance to play this.
Oh yeah. Yeah, this game's awesome. And that's not a lie, Sean. I would never lie about that.
Well, check out Spoils of War over at ArcaneWonders.com. They've got a whole host of other amazing titles, including all of the Dice Tower Essentials line.
You can learn more about Spoils of War at ArcaneWonders.com.
Before we go, Alex, we need to talk about the runners-up for the episode title, don't we?
Yes, indeed.
So, leading off, we've got Jimmy DM90. He suggested Leatherbound, of course, referring to books and other things.
It's referring to the cows in Great Western Trail.
Okay, I'm a little slow on the uptake. It was a
Way
long...
to go, Sean.
Yep, no, that makes perfect sense. I like that.
The name father, Steve O'Rourke, my arch nemesis and rival, and also great all-around guy, came with Top Shelf, which was actually my pick for the episode winner, or at the very least the runner-up, referencing a bunch of top shelf games, a bunch of great games, and also the top shelf of a bookshelf. So I thought that all fit beautifully, and great job, Steve O'Rourke, but it's actually Sean who's the villain this time.
And Matthew S. suggested Red Planets, red spelled R-E-A-D. Of course, Mars is the red planet, and we're talking about books. And what do you do with books, Alex? You burn them or read them.
What?
Depending
Oh, man.
Depending on
That
various choices you've made in life.
That got harsh.
Red, R-E-A-D planets. I like that. Like it a lot.
Next up is Sean's runner-up from Jesse Metcalf, Tomes, Domes, and Roaming Gnomes. Tomes referring to books, Gnomes referring to role player, roaming I guess could refer to Great Western Trail, and Domes referring to Terraforming Mars. So got them all in there. Pretty
I
clever.
love it. It's great. It's fantastic. And then finally, John Giblin suggested Hex, H-E-X, Libris, Hex Libris, to throw in the magical aspect from role player along with Ex Libris. So good job, everybody. Way to go, Guild. Yeah. Give yourselves a pat on the back. Go ahead. Well, wait. Okay.
Woo.
Everyone good? Good. All right. Well, Alex,
Wait, no,
we're gonna wrap.
wait. Nope, I don't think everyone did it. Hang on. Okay, now we're good.
Okay,
All right, sweet.
sorry. I'm sorry. I know. I'm terrible. So we're going to wrap this up. But first, I just want to mention, Alex, that I will be at Arizona Game Fair February 9th, 10th, and 11th in my old stomping grounds. This is the Phoenix metro area. It's out in Mesa, Arizona. And if you go to ArizonaGameFair.com, you can find out more information. If you are in the area or you're a hop, skip, and a jump away from Phoenix, I'd love to see you there. Definitely come by, say hi. I'm very excited. Like I said, this is where I grew up, this town. And so now I'm coming back as one of the special guests. So I'm very excited for that. Excited to play some games. Excited to see my buddy Ellie, my buddy Andy, and a bunch of people from my local shop out there when I was there, Imperial Outpost Games. So very excited.
Very nice. Yeah. Say hi to Ellie for me. He's a good
I
dude.
won't. He dislikes you greatly.
Oh, man.
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
Ellie can't dislike anyone. Ellie loves everyone. So
He's incapable of dislike?
even you, Alex. You
Oh,
put
great.
it to the
That's
test.
the standard. Fantastic. Excellent. Oh, I'm glad he doesn't dislike me, apparently.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, that's going to do it, Alex, for episode 168. Again, our buddy BJ titled this episode, The Duchy Decimal System. I love it. It's fantastic. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Duke you later.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on January 18th, 2018. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com, and for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Tasty Minstrel Games and Arcane Wonders. You can check out all their awesome titles at playtmg.com and arcanewonders.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on!